So, we're going to start the Supreme Court, and I was kind of thinking I don't really explain how the nomination process works. It's just kind of they're in the Senate says yay or nay, and then they go to the court and live the rest of their lives. So I am going to take a step to try to rectify that and explain how the nomination and confirmation process works the best way that I am able. So this is from the Georgetown Law Library. We know that Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution states that the President shall nominate and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate shall appoint judges of the Supreme Court. So the President will usually consult with senators before announcing a nomination. So this most recent one, Ketanji Brown Jackson, that Joe Biden nominated. My hunch is that he first consulted with the senators from her home state. They said, yeah, we like her. Okay. And then he, not when I say he, I mean his White House staff, saw if there might be enough support in the Senate to decide if it was worth even putting her name forward. Okay, he obviously, in her case, decided that it was worth it. So he nominated her. He made a formal announcement. I'm nominating Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to be an Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court. And that nomination gets sent to the Senate Judiciary Committee for its consideration. Now, the Senate Judiciary Committee has become very party political in recent years. I don't know a better way of describing it. It actually used to be kind of just based on the merits, whether a judge got approved or not. Now it really isn't. We see, as we go through the years, votes getting much closer. Like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was a very liberal justice on the Supreme Court, Antonin Scalia, a very conservative justice. Both of them were confirmed, I think, in the mid-'80s to the mid-'90s. They got like 80 to 95 votes. Would that happen today? No, it's very close. Very, very close. Whether a justice passes their confirmation in the Senate and is allowed to take up their post. So the Senate Judiciary Committee holds a hearing on the nominee. And the committee usually takes about a month, roundabouts, to collect and receive all necessary records from the FBI and other sources about the nominee and to prep the nominee for the hearings, likely questions that are going to be asked, making sure they don't have any radical sort of judicial philosophy that's going to come out of the woodwork at a confirmation, things like that. And I'll put up a video of Justice, as she now is, Jackson, at the Senate Judiciary Committee hearings for you to take a look at. And it's very, very grueling what they have to go through, the line of questioning and the attacks on their judicial philosophy and now their personal lives and things like that. And it doesn't matter, race, religion, creed, anything sort of. It doesn't matter who is sitting there. If they're a Democrat, the Republicans are going to go after them mercilessly. If it's a Republican sitting there, the Democrats are going to go after him mercilessly. Doesn't matter. Sexual orientation, race, anything. If a person is the opposite political party, they will try to be slaughtered. Yeah, they will try to slaughter them. Verbally, anyway, up there on the stand or at the table. They're all up on a raised dais. Republicans, for instance, tried to make great hay out of how Justice Jackson ruled in some child pornography cases. If we remember Justice Kavanaugh in his hearings, Christine Blasey Ford came out and said that the justice had sexually assaulted her in high school, and the high school yearbook was brought into evidence. It used to be about the judicial philosophy, if not saying these things aren't important, but it used to be about the judicial philosophy, how people, think, what they would do on the bench, and the personal stuff kind of took a back seat. So witnesses, both supporting and opposing the nomination, present their views, and senators question the nominee on his or her qualifications, judgment, and philosophy. This is ideally speaking what is supposed to happen. I'm going to put up a bunch of videos that walk you through what a Supreme Court nomination kind of looks like today, or Supreme Court nomination hearing, I should say. What is on the screen there is like how it's supposed to be over here. How it is way over there. It's like I've said during this entire class, where we are is so far from where the founders intended us to be. It's just unbelievable. So then the Judiciary Committee votes on the nomination and sends its recommendation to the full Senate that it be confirmed or rejected, or with no recommendation at all. It has to be confirmed for the Senate to take a look at it. There would be something filed called a motion to discharge. I wouldn't put that on a test, don't worry about it. And that motion would get it out of the Senate anyway if it got enough signatures. Get it out of the Senate Judiciary Committee, that is. Then the full Senate debates the nomination, and the rules used to allow for unlimited debate on a nominee, and that used to be that was called the filibuster. To end the filibuster, it required 3/5 of the Senate, known as a cloture vote. So in April 2017, that changed, and there only needs to be 51 votes to end a Supreme Court nomination debate, and that's called the nuclear option. It's just a matter of opinion on whether you think that's a good thing or not. So when debate ends, the Senate votes on the nomination, and a simple majority does it now. It used to be you had to get 60 or more. So if there's a tie, the vice president casts the deciding vote on a nominee. So how do we get there? Well, there has to be an empty seat. How do we get to a place where we were just discussing, where a president has to nominate and then the Senate has to confirm a Supreme Court justice? A seat has to come empty. This can come about in a number of ways. So a justice can die, like Antonin Scalia. He died in February 2016. He was out hunting, I believe. Or retirement. Sandra Day O'Connor is an example of this. Or impeachment. Bad behavior. So Samuel Chase is the only Supreme Court justice who was ever impeached, although he was acquitted by the Senate. So then the president starts the search for a replacement. And he instructs his executive office to start the search. And they can look pretty much anywhere for a nominee, anywhere he fancies. He'll take advice from Congress, and Congress is on there twice, or the American Bar Association, members of the cabinet also. Nominees come from anywhere. They can come from anywhere. There's no, it's not written in the Constitution that a Supreme Court nominee shall go to law school, shall possess a Juris Doctor degree. It's not like that. It's helpful because a majority of cases that the Supreme Court undertakes are really very boring cases involving maybe copyright or just very boring things that require very specific legal knowledge. So it wouldn't be a great idea to nominate just anybody. But you could. So they'll look towards the lower courts. They'll look towards the executive branch, the legislative branch. Maybe a senator has some experience serving as a judge on a lower court before they got elected to the Senate. Maybe he'd be good for the Supreme Court, or she. Academia, also. A law professor at a college would be also a good pick. They'd have the requisite knowledge necessary. They could or could not have served in government. I mean, there's a lot of places you could look. As we said in the last thing we were looking at, everybody's checked by the FBI to ensure that there are no skeletons in the closet. They have an interview with the president himself, because the president's choice is an important factor as the president seeks to leave a legacy. And sometimes it's just the justice that they put on the Supreme Court that is the entire legacy of a presidency. It could just be that. So this is really important. Really, really important that the president gets this right. So the ABA, that's short for the American Bar Association, if you didn't pick that up, we'll give the nominee a rating 2. Clarence Thomas was the last one to receive lower than a perfect rating. So the nominees announced, then they get subject to press scrutiny. Once the nominees announced, they get raked over the coals. They go to the Senate Judiciary Committee, where they get raked over the coals some more, and they can withdraw their nomination if they lose the hearing vote. And sometimes they withdraw just because they take way too much heat. There's a lot of interest in Supreme Court justices in particular, federal judges less so, but it's tough. It's really tough. And if these guys want to, or gals too, want to withdraw, I mean, there's no shame in it. You get, your whole life is just flung open and everything's fair game to anybody who wants to take a look. So if they win, they're appointed as a justice on the Supreme Court. If they lose, they go back to the start. Typically they'll withdraw and the president doesn't have to, make them do it or, go through it again with the same person. So just in summary, there's a vacancy. The executive office instigates a search. The FBI conducts a background check to make sure there are no skeletons in the closet. The Senate has a hearing and confirmation. So the whole hearing, sometimes candidates withdraw. If the hearing is bad, like Kavanaugh, that hearing was bad. And how that guy stuck through it just amazed me, because he got raked over the coals in his family too. And whatever you believe about what Professor Ford said, it was not pretty for the Kavanaugh family either. And it wasn't pretty for Professor Ford. So there's a vote if the committee rules against a nominee. The Senate, as a whole, typically will. So, why is this whole thing important? Why, again, is appointing a Supreme Court justice something that any of us should care about? Well, presidents, they serve 8 years at most. And right now, Supreme Court justices get to serve for life. And many of them outlive the presidents who appoint them, both politically but also in life. So a president looks for somebody who is maybe younger, like John Roberts was significantly younger than Bush the younger was when he was appointed. So John Roberts is going to be there for at least a decade or two after Bush the younger passes on. So that's one of his legacies, is having John Roberts as the Supreme Court Chief Justice. So Bush probably wanted to make sure that the guy was politically sound and someone that he liked, because that's a legacy of his presidency. So presidents seek to appoint someone with similar ideology. So Obama appointed Justices Kagan and Sotomayor. Kagan was the Solicitor General, so Kagan worked, as she went before the Supreme Court regularly as part of her job. So the Supreme Court is an echo chamber of administrations past. I like how this is put. Again, this is not my PowerPoint, but yeah, I like how that's put. So, some famous appointments. Earl Warren was appointed by President Eisenhower. Eisenhower said it was the biggest goddamn mistake of his life to appoint Earl Warren to the bench. Once the Senate confirms, there's nothing you can do. Bork. Oh, I wasn't alive for this, but learning about it, that was a mess. YouTube, if you want some of the Bork hearings, Robert Bork. So Reagan wanted to appoint him. And he was subject, I think that the person who put this together said it really nicely, a negative ad campaign. That was a very kind way of putting it. And it got failed to confirm him. And Souter, George H.W. Bush put him on the bench. H.W. Bush the elder, was a Republican president. But Souter was way liberal. Way liberal. So that one kind of backfired. And that can happen. That can happen. I mean, Souter very well could have been a Republican and a conservative when he was talking to President Bush. And, people change politically as they get older, too. So you have to allow for that, and you can't be too terribly upset if or when that happens. And I don't think Bush the elder was upset about it, I mean. And that's it. That's kind of a short and sweet synopsis of how a Supreme Court justice gets nominated and eventually appointed. And I'm going to put up a bunch of other videos to help you kind of understand how this process goes and how it's walked through. And I'll come back again as needed, depending on what videos I select, to kind of explain what's going on. So that is it for that. And email me with any questions, comments, or concerns. Thanks, guys. See ya.